strive for new beginnings, I will read The Very Hungry Caterpillar. The Very Hungry Caterpillar by Eric Carle. In the light of the moon, a little egg lay on a leaf. One Sunday morning, the warm sun came up and popped out of the egg a tiny and very hungry caterpillar. He started to look for some food. On Monday, he ate through one apple, but he was still hungry. On Tuesday, he ate through 2 pears, but he was still hungry. On Wednesday, he ate through 3 plums, but he was still hungry. On Thursday, he ate through 4 strawberries, but even then, he was still hungry. On Friday, he ate through 5 oranges, but he was still hungry. On Saturday, he ate through 1 piece of chocolate cake, 1 ice cream cone, 1 pickle, 1 slice of Swiss cheese, 1 slice of salami, 1 lollipop, 1 piece of pie, sausage, 1 cupcake, and 1 slice of watermelon. The next day was Sunday. The caterpillar ate through 1 nice green leaf. And after that, he felt much better. Now, he wasn't hungry anymore, and he wasn't a little caterpillar anymore. He was a big, fat caterpillar. He built a small house called a cocoon around himself. He stayed inside for more than 2 weeks. Then, he nibbled a hole in the cocoon, pushed his way out, and he was a beautiful butterfly.
As we begin our prayers this morning, here are joys and concerns. We celebrate with our gratitude as they begin a new chapter in their life journey. We grieve with the friends and family of Rod Morrell, who passed away last week. Trevor Cullen's mother, Elizabeth, died Saturday at the age of 95. Her service was on Thursday in South Carolina. Trevor was deployed in Kuwait and was not able to attend. Jeannie Parker will be having back surgery this Sunday, June 1st, at Rex Hospital with a 2 to 3 day stay. Gail Larson requests prayers. She is currently hospitalized because the chemo is affecting her kidneys. Rita Rakestraw requests prayers for her friend Terry Gleason, who lost his son in May due to COVID-19. We grieve the death of George Floyd and the racism that took his life and the many black and brown lives in our nation. As we hold all these in our hearts, let us pray. God, thank you for letting us be in this amazing place and helping us get through this tough time. Hold us together as we see this amazing journey into this new chapter of life and walk with them as they continue to get closer to you. May your spirit be in and around all of us as we travel on our faith journeys. Hold everyone in your arms as we stumble through this dark time and be the light that we all need. Amen.
In the palm there is a flower, in the seed an apple tree, in cocoons a hidden promise, butterflies will soon be free. In the golden of winter there's a spring that waits to be unrevealed until it's seen. Something alone can see. There's a song in every silence, seeking word and melody. There's a dawn in every darkness, bringing hope to you and me. From the past will come the future, what it holds a mystery, unrevealed until it's
together in one place. And suddenly from heaven there came a sound like the rush of a violent wind, and it filled the entire house. Divided where they were sitting, divided tongues as of fire appeared among them, and a tongue rested on each of them. All of them were filled with the Holy Spirit and began to speak in other languages, as the Spirit gave them ability. Now there were devout Jews from every nation under heaven living in Jerusalem. And at the sound, the crowd gathered and was bewildered, because each one heard them speaking in the native language of each. Amazed and astonished, they asked, "Are not all these who are speaking Galileans? And how is it that we hear each of us in our own native language?" Parthians, Medes, Elamites, and residents of Mesopotamia, Judea, Cappadocia, Pontus, and Asia, Phrygia, Pamphylia, Egypt, and parts of Libya belonging to Cyrene, and visitors from Rome, both Jews and proselytes, Cretans and Arabs, in our own languages we hear them speaking about God's deeds of power. All were amazed and perplexed, saying to one another, "What does this mean?" But others sneered and said, "They are filled with new wine." But Peter, standing with the 11, raised his voice and addressed them. "Men of Judea, and all who live in Jerusalem, let this be known to you, and listen to what I say. Indeed, these are not drunk, as you suppose, for it is only 9 o'clock in the morning. No, this is not what was spoken through the prophet Joel. In the last days it will be, God declares that I will pour out my spirit upon my flesh. And your sons and your daughters shall prophesy, and your young men shall see visions, and your old men shall dream dreams. Upon my slaves, both men and women, in those days I will pour out my spirit, and they shall prophesy. And I will show potence in the heaven above and signs on the earth below, blood and fire and smoky mist. The sun shall be turned to darkness and the moon to blood, before the coming of the Lord's great and glorious day. Then everyone who calls on the name of the Lord shall be saved."
I've grown up in this church. My entire life has been influenced by the people I've met here. I wanted to say thank you to this congregation for supporting me, always. From shaving my head for St. Baldrick's to my many, many fundraisers for my choir. I love this church and its people, and while it will be hard to say goodbye, I won't be far away, as I plan to go to Chapel Hill in the fall.
Good morning. My name is Malcolm Hill, and I've been a member of Pullen since 2009. Growing up in Pullen has given me a lot of memories. I can remember Festival by the Sea, the Halloween festivals, and BYC. Those are just a few examples of opportunities that allowed me to make new friends. And camps and retreats have been special to me because I can remember in my first years, it allowed me to make new friends that I didn't have in school. And in just my first few years in BYC and the fall retreat, I've made lifelong friends that I still talk to today. And each time I return to these camps, I've been able to strengthen my friendships and also make new friends. Around 5 years ago, my family moved to Washington, D.C., which was kind of hard because I had to leave all my friends from North Carolina. And even though I couldn't acolyte on Sundays anymore, and I couldn't see my friends from Pullen, I was still welcome to go to the camps and retreats. And I still felt a part of the church because I just loved going to the camps and retreats, especially BYC. And I was able to see my friends, and seeing them once in the year was even more special than seeing them, I guess, every Sunday. Thank you.
When I was a little girl, me and my family moved from Florida to Indonesia. We lived there for 5 years, and even after all this time, I still consider it to be my home. I love the culture of Indonesia and the friendships that I made. However, in Indonesia, there are also its problems. Indonesia has trash everywhere. The environment wasn't really clean. It was even in the water. Also, school wasn't free in Indonesia, and a lot of people were poor. In Indonesia, I went to a Christian school called SPH, Sekolah Pelita Harapan. At that school, despite my autism, we had a very close community there. Teachers helped me succeed even with my disability, and I will always thank them for giving me a chance. I loved that school so much that I wanted to go through 6th to 8th grade, but this was not possible. You see, people with special needs in SPH only stop at 5th grade and then go no further. I was devastated, but a solution eventually presented itself in the form of a project. I was so desperate to continue going to school there that for one of my projects, I went to the principal and did a speech in order to persuade him to not let just me, but other students with disabilities, the chance to continue school all the way. It worked. Because of what I did, students with special needs could continue school. I was so happy and relieved. I proved you can make a difference when you speak out about injustices. In that school, everything was God-oriented. We would sing songs about God in school meetings and gatherings. We even had a class that was called Biblical Studies, and some of the projects we did would center around God. Now, at that time, when I was young, I really loved and believed in God. I also felt more of a closeness with Him. I also thought that God touched me once on the back one time, and I thought it was really cool. We would also go to church. We changed from IES, an Assembly of God's Church in Jakarta, to Karawaci Presbyterian Church, our village. My favorite thing about those things was the youth group. However, I felt more close to the people in KPC than IES. We would all have these fun little gatherings where we would play games and eat food. It was the best thing ever. I looked forward to them a lot. I also would go to BSF, Bible Study Fellowship, another place that would teach about God. Now, because I was young, I would believe anything those churches and Bible studies told me. These churches and Bible studies were conservative, but I didn't know that at the time. I'm now going to tell you a few differences from those churches and Pullen. KBC and BSF especially thought everything LGBTQ was wrong, that it was a sin. Those churches never questioned anything that the Bible said. They believed in everything that was said wholeheartedly. They didn't believe in women's right to choose or that they could be pastors. They didn't even protest or march. When I was young, I never questioned anything or knew exactly what LGBTQ was. But I accepted it anyways, even though it was wrong. However, then when I came to America, everything changed. When we moved back to the U.S. in 2016, we decided to try and find a church where we could fit in and feel comfortable. We first decided to go to BSF again, but we grew tired of it and quit. Then, one miraculous day, my Aunt Kara told us about Pullen Church. Mom fell in love with it. It took some time, but I eventually fell in love with the Pullen church too, and the youth group. Pullen has taught me so many things I never knew in Indonesia. Pullen has taught me to question, to love people no matter their gender or ethnicity, and to see God in a completely new way. I'm grateful that the youth group here has talked about things such as politics, racism, and religion. I love that I learned so many new things from them that I wasn't aware of before, and I love that Pullen has given me the opportunity to participate in things I care about. And because of that, I wouldn't be where I am today without them. Pullen has inspired me to choose a career that helps and serves others. Don't know what that is yet. Guess we'll see.
This is the time of year where I try to shove my emotions down and not feel them. It's the time of year when I look at a handful of our teenagers that this church has loved well, and I have come to call my own, and I wish them well, give them blessings, and challenge them in their futures. Like every class that moves beyond this youth ministry, they will be deeply missed. And graduates, just in case you haven't gotten the message over the last 3 years that I have been here, I will always be there for you. This youth ministry will always be yours. And this congregation will always be your loving and supportive home. As our graduates leave, we give 2 gifts. One, a pencil sketch of their senior photo that will also hang on the wall in the youth space. Once we're all through this mess, I invite you to walk through the youth space and see our new graduates' photos. We also send them with a copy of our scriptures, a wonderful study Bible, so that they can take what they have learned here and continue. But graduates, we also send you with a blessing. Skylar, your resolve in the face of so much adversity is inspiring. May your quiet strength and deep thinking mind take you all the places you want to go in life. And may no one ever succeed in trying to bury the true divine self that lies within. Mary Alice, your warm hugs and bright smile can dissolve the hardest of emotions. May your outlook on life, honesty about who you are, and sense of compassion never fade away. And may no one ever succeed in trying to bury the true divine self that lies within. Malcolm, the joy that you bring to any room you enter is intoxicating and contagious. May your sense of humor, your tender heart, and inquisitive mind continue to bring new life to those who are willing to soak it all in. And may no one ever succeed in trying to bury the true divine self that lies within. Noel, that sweet, gentle spirit combined with a tenacity and a drive is absolutely stunning. May your contributions to this world continue to make it a better place for us all to live. And may no one ever succeed in trying to bury the true divine self that lies within. Now, parents of these graduates, may you send your children into the next chapter of their life journey with all the confidence in the world that they know they are deeply loved by their parents and their faith community. That they have everything they need to thrive. May you restrain yourself when you want to jump in and fix everything for them. May you hold them physically and emotionally when they need it, but also allow yourselves to be held every time you realize that the child with boo-boos and a chocolate-covered face is out there without your protection. And may all of you lean heavily on this community that has loved you and supported you through the years. We love you. And now a challenge for our graduates and all of our youth, because adolescence is primed for Pentecost. But let's start at birth, shall we? Lisa Gungor writes in her book, The Most Beautiful Thing I've Seen, the story of her daughter, Lucy, being defined at her birth. You see, all the dreams and stories Lisa had written in her head about who her daughter would be and how she would act and how she would relate to her older sister were promptly erased when the nurse looked at her in the delivery room and told her that her daughter displayed the characteristics and symptoms of Down syndrome. That two-word definition of who her daughter would be drastically changed everything. Lisa panicked over what life would be like and the hardships that she would face and the pain of being picked on. But it all seemed to fade away when she held Lucy in her arms, skin to skin, and nursed her. Lisa, like all of us parents, realizes that this little human is a miracle and is dependent on you. And as they grow, we get used to being there for them and them trusting us all the time. Then it starts. That little two-letter word, no. They defy you. They question you. Then they realize that they are capable of decision making without you. Then they start thinking their decisions are better decisions. And sometimes they are, and that scares you. Then it's during adolescence that these tiny chocolate cake covered humans begin to detach. They begin making a life for themselves. Socially, they are more defined by their friends than they are their families. You see, time with friends fires the same signals in the brain that nursing did as an infant. Religiously, they question everything. We as a church can either nurture that or squash it. But their identity is beginning to take shape. Neurons are being rewired to accommodate new information in an ever-expanding universe of ideas. This is why every wild idea about what could be and should be heard by the people that love them. Every possibility of a new world, a new way of being, a new method of doing, because the second we deny their reality and belittle their imagination, we stick a knife in the heart of the next generation. Our teenagers are primed to be set on fire with the fires of Pentecost. Now let me speak directly to our teenagers. We are in the midst of this swirling chaos of tremendous change. Those swirling winds of change around us are not something to be afraid of. It's not a storm raging. It is the Spirit moving, and you have the choice. You can hunker down in your bed with a blanket pulled over your head, wait for it all to end, and then emerge to the same world that you saw when you started hiding. Or you can allow the Spirit to breathe fresh life into this world and this world around you. Rise to your feet and proclaim good news. Will you be the generation that rises to your feet and says no more racism and bigotry in the White House, or the House chambers, or the Senate chambers, or the North Carolina General Assembly, or the school board, or county commissioners, or in pulpits and principals' offices, and certainly not on the police force? Will you be the generation that finally grows sick of watching your friends be called names because of the color of their skin, who they love, or their gender identity? Will you be the generation that ends black and brown people dying in the streets at the hands of police officers who go largely unpunished? Will you be the generation that demands clean air to breathe, clean water to drink, and a future for generations to come for all people, not just rich white people? Will you start by calling out the classmate who says a racist or homophobic slur? Will you start by standing up for the quiet kid who everyone picks on? Will you start by using the recycling bins and compost bins? Will you take ownership in how your school treats minority classmates by relentlessly naming the injustices to those in authority? Will you ask every gun owner if their right to bear arms is more precious than your life just trying to get an education? Will you listen for the cry of the oppressed marching in the streets and the moaning of Mother Earth? Will you choose to be filled, stand, and proclaim, or will you sit down in your bed, pull the blanket over your head, and ignore it all? You are primed for Pentecost. And may the fires of Pentecost rising inside of you burn down the barriers to justice, equality, and freedom. You are not the future of the church, you are the church. You are not future leaders, you are leaders. On the day of Pentecost, the church was given new life and things drastically changed. It's been a while since a generation of young people changed things. Right now, there seems to be more chaos than we've seen in a long time. Will you listen? Will you rise? Will you be filled and speak? I know you can. I've seen you doing it. And there are those of us old people here who will be right there beside you, encouraging you. Because I can relate to Lisa Gunger being deathly terrified of her daughter's condition ending her sweet life. I was in the same place when my baby girl came into this world, deathly terrified that she had the same condition that took the life of my 7-week-old niece. What I cannot relate to or even begin to fathom is looking at my sweet baby boy and wondering if the color of his skin will be the reason he suffers and possibly dies at the hand of a white man charged with protecting the public. Something has to give. May we seek shalom.
Me and all my friends, we're all misunderstood. They say we stand for nothing, and there's no way we ever could. Now we see everything that's going wrong with the world and those who lead it. We just feel like we don't have the means to rise above and beat it, so we keep on waiting. waiting on the world to change. We keep on waiting on the world to change. It's hard to beat the system when you're standing at a distance, so we keep on waiting on the world to change. That's why we keep on waiting on the world to change. It's not that we don't care, we just know the fight ain't fair, so we keep on waiting on the world to change. We keep on waiting on the world to change. One day our generation is gonna rule the population, so we keep on waiting on the world to change. No, we keep on waiting on the world to change. Waiting on the world to change. Waiting on the world to change. Waiting on the world to change.
It is such a joy every year this time of year to have our youth lead this Youth Sunday. They always do an amazing job, and this year is no exception, as they have spoken to us on this Pentecost Sunday, shared their thoughts, their experiences, and as Brian has just delivered an amazing Pentecost Youth Sunday sermon. I do know that we had some technical difficulties at the beginning of this service, and we apologize for that. We are working to make sure that does not happen week after week. I'm here to offer some words in addition to the powerful and beautiful words that you have already heard spoken this morning. But my words are specific about what happened in our city last night. Last night, as our city erupted in the pain and grief and anger and frustration of 400 years of racial injustice, systemic racism, I sat in my home trying to find something to hold on to ground myself in, something that I might be able to do, a word from my faith that might offer some hope. Around 7 p.m., I decided to walk downtown. I had not been a part of the protest earlier in the day, but there was such a strong urge in me to be present, to feel the tension, to feel the grief, the pain, the struggle, and I guess in some way to stand in solidarity with the cries of pain and suffering. I returned home just as the protests began to escalate on Fayetteville Street, and for the next 4 hours I sat watching on TV the unfolding of the intense anger and pain and frustration. Yes, there was violence as people broke almost every glass storefront on Fayetteville Street and some on Wilmington Street. And yet, as I watched it all unfold, it was the violence our nation has done to black people that occupied my mind. With each window that was broken, I recalled the face of another black brother and sister that has been killed by racism and white supremacy. There really are no words right now, only weeping. I sat there and I asked God to forgive us, to help us understand, to help us change, to help us have compassion. It was a time of deep lamenting. And as I lamented, I remembered a Facebook post that I had read earlier in the week by our own David Anderson. David wrote, "I see some people commenting about how other people are destroying their own communities. I wonder how this connects to the ancient biblical expressions of deep grief, rending your own garment, pulling out your own beard, covering your flesh in ashes and wailing because the grief you hold in your body is too much to contain." patriarchs, he writes, of the stories of faith destroyed their property and disfigured their bodies in the midst of deep grief. Perhaps in our convenience-driven culture, we have forgotten, David writes, how to mourn. Perhaps we have forgotten how deep the well of grief can be, even after 400 years. David is right. We are living this ancient biblical story today. The expressions of last night are expressions of deep grief. The modern day expressions of rending your own garment, pulling out your own beard, doing something because the grief we are asking people to hold in their bodies is way too much to contain. You see, when you oppress and marginalize people, through an economy of extraction and through gentrification and through denying people a living wage and denying them health care. This is the story that eventually unfolds. And it is the story of our faith. Today on this Pentecost Sunday, the Sunday that the church, as Brian has said, celebrates the coming of the Spirit, there is a word in that story for us today, as Brian has already pointed out. The story says that the Spirit came in the sound of a violent wind and in fire and in different languages. The Spirit came as a disruption of the calm. Disruption of our world views, disruption of who's in and who's not. You might say that Pentecost was God's protest. God's Spirit came at Pentecost and broke down things, broke down barriers, language barriers. There was no official language and is no official language in God's lexicon. It's only the language of love and justice and compassion and inclusion. The Spirit came on that first Pentecost day and broke down the barriers that try to keep God locked up in religious buildings and in rules that oppress and dehumanize human beings. That Spirit that came wasn't a calm breeze. It was a violent wind. It was a disorienting wind and spirit. It was a wind and spirit of chaos, as Brian has said. It was a wind and spirit of disorder. And today in our nation, we are experiencing the outbreaking of the Spirit. Can we imagine that the Spirit is in the chaos? As people of faith, can we try and hold a different understanding of the chaos? Can we trust that the Spirit is in the disorientation and in the disorder and in the grief and pain and anger and frustration? And can we trust, as people of faith, that the Spirit is at work right now in our nation? The Spirit was at work last night in our city. And then the question comes, can we find ways to work with the Spirit to bring about healing and to bring about a new creation? Can we be a part of God's protest as Pentecost people? I believe we can. I hope we can. I know that Pullen can, because we have and we are and we must continue. You're getting ready to see a video that Shalise and I recorded yesterday. It is a call to action. It is one small call to action that we're asking you to participate in. It's not the only thing we can and should or will do, but it helps us to do something. So I invite you to listen to the video and respond as you can. And beyond that, I ask you to offer your words of deep gratitude and celebration to the youth of Pullen Church, to our graduates, to our youth program, to our youth minister, Brian Lee. Send your blessings to them, your support, for they are our hope today. Blessings. I know you join me in celebrating our youth on this Youth Sunday. We especially celebrate our graduates and send them with our blessings as they move into this next stage of their life. We are so fortunate here at Pullen to have a long history of strong youth programs and youth leadership in our church. Youth who move on into the world to make a difference for the common good, having been nurtured here by this community. And so we do indeed offer our gratitude to them and for them, and we offer our blessings on them. Shalise and I are here to ask for your help. Last Sunday in my sermon, I challenged our congregation to take hold boldly of the baton of racial justice, to pick up the mantle of racial justice that has been handed to us through generations. It was impossible to know that within less than 24 hours after that sermon, another black man would be killed by a white police officer. The war on black people in our nation continues to escalate, and we must not stand by in silence. We must take action now. We cannot be silent any longer.
Our country is deeply fractured because of the sin of racism and the legacy of white supremacy. And this is not a new reality, but one that maybe we are just able to become more aware of because we're seeing it. And throughout history, the silence of the white church in particular has been deafening. Its declarations and apologies have come too little, too late. And if there is any institution that ought to be willing to take up the fight of reconciliation, to work for liberation, it ought to be the Church of Jesus Christ. And I believe that it ought to be Pullen Church in particular.
So Shalise and I are here this morning to issue a call to action for all Pullenites. In addition to being a confessing church in which we confess the sin of racism in America, and in addition to being a lamenting church where we lament the deaths of black people at the hands of white supremacists, we are calling our church to action this Wednesday from noon until 1 to form a human line from our church to the state capitol, with each person holding an anti-racist message on their sign with the name of a person who has been the casualty of racism and white supremacy in our nation. We need 200 Pullen participants to form this human line of anti-racist messages from our church to the state capitol. With 200 participants, we can station a person every 34 feet between here and the Capitol to hold out the messages that we will no longer stand in silence to the racism of this country, that we will stand and work and take action for racial justice in our world, doing whatever we can. And so we are asking you to sign up by emailing me at npetty@pullen.org, npetty@pullen.org, saying that you will be one of the 200 participants who will form this human line from Pullen Church to the Capitol with our anti-racist messages. Once you have signed up by sending me an email message saying that you will participate, you will then receive an email message with specific instructions as to where you are to go on Wednesday with your sign. These are very difficult times in our nation on many levels. And as Shalise says, this is not new. These killings have been happening for generations. These are our modern day lynchings in America. And we must, as the church, and as this specific church, take a stand. And now is the time.
This action is an opportunity for you to show up for people who are waiting for you to use to harness your power for their liberation. This cannot be all that we do, but it is an important action. And this action and others like it are a way to keep these issues in our collective consciousness so that as a country, and certainly as a community that is committed to justice, we cannot just continue to dismiss these things as a part of our culture, but we begin to work together seriously and intentionally to find ways to mend what is broken, to tear down what oppresses, and to create a community where all people can thrive together.
If you need materials to make your signs, the staff of Pullen will be at the church on Monday from noon to 1 at the back door with supplies. So if you need supplies to make your sign, all you need to do is drive through the parking lot on Monday from noon to 1, and we will give you what you need to make your sign.
To sign up, email inpetty@pullen.org and join us on Wednesday.